I take sips on camera. Hi, I'm Molly.
I'm Alicia.
And this is Molly and Alicia talking on the couch.
We are just starting. We're just putting our necks out there and hitting record. And we have a topic in mind. But none of this is planned out. We're really just beginning.
So we have our business partnership name is Good Girls, and something that we've talked about for a long time is doing something like a Good Girls guide, or kind of conversations and other things that relate to our interests outside of clothing, and also including clothing, I guess, but a Good Girls guide to, for example, conversation. And so that's something that we were together last night, and we were talking about how do you get beyond the sort of mundane in everyday conversation, and not that you have to do a deep dive with somebody. If they say, how are you doing? You don't have to be like, well, since you asked, having a really complicated set of feelings right now. But just that, either how can we respond, or how can our questions be a better reflection of who we actually are in that moment, instead of these kind of rote questions and rote responses. And so we thought maybe we'd give you a little window in on that. We don't, like Alicia said, really have a script, but we're just mostly thinking about, these are things that we think about and talk about. And so we figured these are things that you might be thinking about and talking about too.
I think we're also really good at having meaningful conversations.
You and me?
Well, with each other, but I think we can get there a little more quickly with new people too.
Yeah.
Maybe because we're just practiced, or we value it.
Yeah.
I'm sure that it strikes people as weird sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure people have left, at least with me, a conversation being like, what is going on? You
ask more probing questions than most people.
Yeah.
Out of, I think, two things. One is genuine interest, and then two is a desire to kind of open people up a bit more than maybe they want to be, or what they're used to be.
Yeah.
So it's a little disarming.
It is a little disarming. And I do sometimes have, not regret, but I think about it later and think, oh, I hope that I didn't put somebody off, or come across as too probing, or wanting to know more than is appropriate. But it really does come from a place of genuine curiosity, and I think an interesting connection.
And I think you wish that people would ask you these questions too. The questions that you ask people, I think that you wish,
that's probably true.
That you wish that someone would kind of have the same curiosity about you, and give you an opportunity to reflect and open yourself up in the same way. And I think you do it on your own, but I think some of that, it's just like when we give people compliments, it's you feel that way about yourself, and so you want to extend it to someone else, or you know what I'm saying.
I understand. Yep.
So one of the things that we were talking about is this, either in, we're coming up on now holidays, and you're going to be very likely in situations where you're either reuniting with people or meeting new people. And so, how do we have conversations that transcend, the super mundane, which is how are your holidays? Are you traveling?
Work?
What is happening for you? What do you do? And that is,
I think it's also exhausting.
Yeah.
Because you go through so many of those conversations, because they're so brief, and they're really meant to just, I think, you're being cordial, and you're being friendly and showing an appropriate level of interest in somebody, but you don't get anywhere, and so you tend to have dozens of them in a night. If you're at a party,
and I feel
when
I'm in mixed groups of people, either family or other social gatherings, that I feel like I'm trying to also do this work of like connecting people, you know, and sort of like saying,
you're
you know,
very good at that. That's something that you do a wonderful job
well,
of.
that's a nice compliment.
And you, I will say,
you.
You're welcome. Beyond that, I think you also do a great job of describing people to new people as more than just their job or their partner or their family structure. You do a great job of saying like, oh, this is, you know, Susie, one of the dearest people in the world to me, and she, you know, one of the things I love so much about her is this, and so I think you should meet her because you two would have this in common.
Yeah.
And that is not like, this is Susie who's a, you know, a vet, and you're a vet too, so you two should talk.
I do that sometimes.
You do that too, but then you're like,
sometimes
bye,
too.
bye.
You guys are both vets. You should talk. But I will.
You do a good job of like, you're a dear-hearted person. You're a dear-hearted
well,
person.
and I think I read somewhere. Thank you for saying that. And I think I read somewhere once that like
we all read this article.
That you should say what that person has done for you or would do for you. So it would be like, she's the woman that I would call if I was stranded on 94.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is that friend for me, and is like the total like go-to person for this, or I've known this person since I was 4 and we still get together, you know, whatever, and it's like family. Like, those kinds of things are sort of fun to know about, I think, about somebody and about like our connection. But then when you're meeting strangers, so these are the things that we were talking about last night. Like, so in the everyday, often what we say to each other is, you know, how's your week going? Or how are you doing? And, you know, if depending on your intimacy like level with someone, you might say, I'm good. I'm fine. Or it's really busy right now. And so we were talking about, you know, what are some other responses, and also different questions rather than like, how is your week going, or, you know, how are you?
Right.
And I think like one thing I ask my kids this often is like, how are you feeling? Like how are you feeling right now? And then also, you know,
how do you feel is also a great follow-up to how are you?
Right.
How's your day?
How are you feeling right now?
How do you feel about that?
Yeah, right. So that you get a little more in depth, and also like, you know, I mean, I think it's prescriptive and also weird to say, is there anything that surprised you about your day? But, you know, just something more along the lines of like, what happened during the day for you, you know, versus like, honestly, even just saying like, how was your day? I think our rote response is always like, good, you know, it was good, nothing unusual. But was there anything that stood out to you about your day today, or how did the day feel to you? You know, my husband and I will do that a lot when we're checking in at the end of the day. You know, I always ask my kids things like, who did they sit next to at lunch, and like, what did they eat, just to get the ball rolling. But I think,
along those lines, my friend Stephanie started a company, I think it's still operating, called Hilo Glitter. And I know we talked about this, but I nannied for her twin girls, Heather and Emily, growing up. And what they would do every night at dinner, the girls were asked, well, everybody in the family was asked to share a high, a low, and a glitter. And the glitter was like the unexpected thing. And I started that with my children, and the delightful thing about that, and we don't always use that language, is that now they just expect it. So they expect to sit down or in the car to say like, this was a great part of my day, this was a hard part of my day, and this is something I didn't expect. So I mean, I think as adults, like, we assume that we don't need to communicate those things any longer, or that it's like, if it's intimate, you know, you shouldn't share it. But I actually think adults need it just as much as kids need it. I mean, we need to continue to process and like develop our emotional literacy, and that includes how, you know, describing for ourselves like what we're like, kind of the state that we're in, and not just like compartmentalizing that and reserving it for like a therapy session. Right. That you could do that in a kind of more just moderate way in a daily interaction. Right. So so what about then the setting, like the more sort of social setting, or even like a work setting where you're getting to know somebody for the first time, and,
you know, and you know, party or whatever, like what do you think are some
good questions?
Yeah, good questions.
That's a great question. I like the
well, say what you said at your reunion.
Yeah, so
when
this
you were
is what's coming to mind,
Yeah.
which is definitely not appropriate. I think when you are
A stranger.
entering a new like a new job, don't ask this question. You'll be immediately pinned as the weirdo. So at my 20-year reunion, I didn't actually even realize this until I arrived. But you quickly realize that conversations are like filled with landmines, because you don't want to ask somebody a question that is too probing or potentially painful. And so, you know, even like the basic questions like, what do you do for a living, or are you married, or what's your, you know, do you have children? Like, don't ask any of those. Somebody doesn't have a job. Somebody is not married, or
someone
is
lost
recently
a child,
divorced.
or
Somebody has lost a child or not been able to conceive, or, you know, they don't want children and they don't want to get into a conversation with you about why. So the question I landed on, and I did get some flack for this, was,
she's a weirdo. Like
tell
a delightful weirdo.
Tell me the best thing that's happened to you in the last 10, if I saw them at the 10 reunion, or 20 years. What's been the best thing that's happened to you?
Yeah.
It's kind of a hard question.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that you could do that in the, like, what's one of your best, like, professional experiences,
Yeah.
you know? Like, tell me a little bit about how you came to be here, you know? Like, what part of your path guided you to here? Or, like, you know, how are you connected to tonight's event? Or, you know, like, what... you know, or even if it's like a fundraising event or something,
Yes.
you know, like what do you feel? How are you passionate about this?
Right.
And,
or how do you know the hosts of the party? Here's what I will say about my question of what's the best thing that's happened to you, is that it kind of did one of two things. It either somebody gave me an answer sort of right away and was just like, and then we had something interesting to talk about, or it made them laugh and be like, whoa, which was funny. I mean, it was disarming, and so it was then easier to be like, and then they would say things like, I don't know, I mean, I don't feel great about what's happened in the last 10 years, or, you know, I have a lot of things that I feel good about, and I feel weird just standing here telling you about them. But it was, you know, it was a weird question, but it did, I don't think it made anybody feel bad.
Not bad.
No.
And I think it's actually totally appropriate also to kind of preface things by saying, you know, I'm kind of in a place where I just want to have a more meaningful conversation. So is it okay if I, you know, do a strange introduction or ask you questions that aren't about work? And that's kind of like, I mean, in like psychological terms, it's like a buffering statement. It gives people a minute to sort of adapt and go like, okay, so this isn't going to be like your typical party conversation. She's giving me a chance to say no thank you, or to move away.
We talked about this last night. You tried this out at a holiday party,
Yeah.
I think a year or two ago. And
Everyone loved it.
Okay,
Everybody loved it.
Tell us some of the statements you used, and then like a follow-up question.
Well, I think I did use buffering statements.
Right.
So I think I always said, you know, I am, you know, I always kind of introduced myself as like connected to the host, however, and then I said something like, you know, I'm trying out this idea based upon something that I read about, you know, how to have more meaningful interactions. And so I'm just going to ask you, you know, like, what makes you light up? Like, what gives you, like, what brings you joy? I think I was really, at the time that I was doing that, I was really drunk. I probably was. That helps. And so, in conclusion, drank a lot of alcohol. No, but I think that I was like in a lot of the like rhetoric around like joy and having like, you know, bringing undercurrents of joy into your life. And so I think that was really my question, was just like, you know, what brings you joy, or what have you done in the past few months that has brought you a lot of joy, and when you experience it? And people were just like, It is
It's
disarming.
Like, I know.
It's
also
disarming.
Such a good question,
But
though.
then it is also, I mean, the thing that's so great about that is also it's totally open-ended, and a lot of people jumped in.
Yeah.
Where it wasn't like, and even if they were jumping in to be critical of me, which I can take,
Yeah.
it was just sort of like, oh, we're going to do this. Like, we're going to have this kind of a conversation, which was, I thought that was really lovely. And the other day when I was like walking through church and I, was saying hello to an older person, and they said, oh, how are you doing? And she just like very forthrightly and with a lot of enthusiasm said, I'm grateful. I was like, oh, right. Like, we don't have to, and I mean, it's a little much, but also like, we don't have to just say like, good.
You appreciated what she was doing, and if I don't know what happened next, but you could have then said to her, like, tell me about it.
Walked away.
See, and that's a good reminder, right? Maybe we make people feel that way sometimes, but the beautiful thing about saying grateful is it's then very easy to say, tell me about that. What are you feeling grateful for? As I'm listening to you, I think if we are to continue to sort of adopt this model of going beyond the basics in conversation, going beyond the how are you, how's work, I think we have to be comfortable with rejection and a certain amount of discomfort. Yeah. And it's temporary, right?
Yeah.
It's like a temporary
I think that,
window.
like Brene Brown has said, it's like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, can you endure 10 seconds of discomfort to then get to something that's going to be potentially a lot more meaningful? Yeah. Or, she says 10 seconds of discomfort versus a lifetime of resentment.
And
like
she
that,
frames that around like saying no to things.
Right.
But the very same
or being
thing
clear.
can be applied to choosing to engage with people in a different way.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And so the whole sort of point of this conversation when we originally started it was that, while we are interested in just having like a very kind of casual interaction with someone for the point of connection, that there is something about this stage of life where you feel like, why are we going through these motions?
Yeah.
Like, why are we going through these motions and not saying, I am in pain and I would love to tell you why. And, or I had a really amazing thing happen at work today and I feel like tooting my own horn and like being proud and excited about it. Or my child is going through something really difficult and I don't know really what to do about it and I want to share. And I think it comes down to vulnerability.
It does.
And also like at this point in life, and as we move into kind of middle life, like wanting more substance versus the kind of what is it, like culturally learned behaviors, like just wanting more substantive interactions and knowing that it's possible, and also knowing that like that's gorgeous, like that is like gorgeous stuff, like when you actually get to like look at someone's heart or see a little bit of vulnerability, or even surprise when someone is like, oh, no one has literally ever asked me that question. And then it's an opportunity for reflection and kind of openness, and that for me anyway is like much more meaningful.
I agree. I'm into it. I am endlessly fascinated by people, and I love getting
weird questions.
I do, and I will ask. Oh gosh, part of me wants to kind of close with like some suggestions for questions, and also a question to those of you who will watch this, like what do you ask, or how do you get beyond the basics in conversation? But I also think like we could close with a couple of them.
Should we do like a practice? Well, what if we just like do a practice round with each other?
That's cool. That's great.
Okay. So, I think that like depending on where we post this, because I have no idea what we're going to do with this, it would really be cool to hear also kind of if you try this out, what happens?
How does it go
like,
for you?
What do you, like what is the response and what happens?
Be sure to let us know the question you asked.
All right, so I'll go. Do you want to go first? You want me to go first?
Go ahead, you go
I
ahead.
can ask you
Do
a
you
question.
have a question in mind?
I think I'm going to ask you, where did you feel like aware of your emotional reaction in the past week and kind of like took a different, like went a different direction, or like you felt it kind of come up and then you went a different direction? This is like way more deep divey.
Wow.
I mean, because it's like stuff that we talk about all the time. But like, where did you feel awareness of your emotions in like a non-reactive way, where you were like, oh, I'm like, what up, you know?
Yeah, where
feeling,
I did it, but I didn't actually have an emotional response.
where you didn't
I
get,
just-
you were reactive.
I was
you
aware.
were just like, oh, I'm like feeling this.
Well, I mean, this is actually an easy question for me because I had a mammogram this week, as you know, and I certainly walking into the dark. It's like a very low.
By the
lit
way, I
room.
said I would go with you,
I-
and I think
I
that
will-
you, like next time, and
Next
you
time
should
I'll
come
have you go with me. I
Yeah.
will. I mean, I don't want to get off topic
Yeah.
here. I will say this, and I posted about it earlier this week on our Instagram. I think you should bring a friend. It's frightening. Molly did say to me the day before, I will go with you anytime. And I didn't, I said, thank you, but I'm okay. And I think that was a mistake. And I think the bigger mistake for me was feeling like I was supposed to do it alone and that I should have done it alone. So maybe actually that's maybe part
like
one.
a buddy, like having a buddy.
Right.
Yeah.
I should have brought a buddy. But so walking into the room, I was struck immediately, feeling kind of fearful and alone and thinking, I should have had Molly come with me. I should have had a friend. But I also think it was a time where I felt very emotionally raw because I was thinking of all the women who have walked into this room and how they have very likely felt the same fear and just
a life-changing, it can be a pivotal moment.
It can be, it's like that test takes 10 minutes and it can really change the course of your life. And I think I was kind of overwhelmed and very aware of my emotions. But again, there are you have to position your body in all of these different ways and there's a lot to do. So it's not a place where it's easy to just succumb to your emotions.
Yeah.
But I really was like, oh, I'm feeling all of these different things come up and it isn't that interesting.
Yeah. And you were able to process things later.
Yeah, well
after
then
the
I
fact
had a
and
total, a day of a lot
weeping.
of crying, much weeping. Yeah.
Well, I will be your mammogram buddy anytime,
Thank
and I want
you.
you to come with me when I go in December. So,
Okay, well, are you ready for mine?
Yeah,
obviously we would then continue talking about this, right? Because we're good.
Do you see how deep I almost cried?
I know. I'm going to ask you a pretty easy one that I have asked you. I think I ask you this almost every week. It's one of my favorite questions to ask you, and it's not weird. But I will say, what do you feel most proud of this week?
Most.
Or what's a moment that stands out as a proud moment for you this week?
Well, I feel proud that we're having issues with our furnace, and I feel proud that I always am willing to look it up and troubleshoot it myself, and we have spare parts, and I mean, I'm safe. I'm not just sort of
safe.
flagrantly going around, but I feel pretty empowered to deal with those things that come up in our home that are surprises, but also not surprises, because when you own a home it's all the time. And so I replaced a zone valve motor on our furnace this morning.
Molly MacGyver brain.
I
this
feel
is such a true thing about you, and I'm so glad you're publicly stating this.
I feel good about that. I mean, I
Yeah.
feel, and even if it didn't totally work or if it wasn't totally effective, I feel like proud that I'm willing to, like, be curious enough to like take like the time to figure out how it works and then try something out. So that would be sort of more of a like tactical sort of on the ground thing that I feel proud of. And then in a more general sense, I think like I'm trying to be really just present in my life, like to my kids and to my family, and like to not be rushing through every moment. And I feel proud that like there have been some hard mornings of like getting kids out of the house or getting kids up, sick kids, anxious kids, whatever. And I think that I've done a pretty good job of staying present to their needs and not trying to rush through.
I think last week along these same lines, you said to me, I'm really trying not to think of what's coming next,
Yeah.
but I'm trying to think of what's happening in the moment,
Right.
and just like how to stand in the moment rather than, become overwhelmed because there are 10 more things that need to happen.
Or kind of try to press,
just
like make that thing
move
happen
through.
faster
Right.
so that you can get to the next thing. And even
Mhm.
if it's just like speed it up, like tell me, okay, so what do we got to do? Like, how are we going to fix it? And I think that I was more present to, I mean, there was one moment where I could have been maybe more present to it, and then I gradually kind of fell into it. But I think I'm doing better with that, and I am constantly practicing that. And I don't think it's like a mastery thing. I think it's like a practice thing. Like you just kind of keep trying to be called into presence. So, yeah, those are mine. What are you
Good.
proud of?
I feel proud of choosing Instacart this morning
Yeah, that's self-care.
because it was one of those days, and it feels every weekend is like, you're trying to like squeeze every last moment out of it. And just because of the morning my family was having, I was like, I can kind of wrangle everybody and like squeeze it in with children in tow and on the busiest day, and it's gonna be,
It'll cost you a little extra money,
It'll
but it'll be like in the end, it'll be worth it.
well, just grocery shopping on a Saturday morning with your kids
the worst.
and everybody else, it's the worst. And so I was sitting there kind of thinking, like, do I do it or do I just pay $11, between like the service fee and the tip, and get what I need and
not
have it
to go.
delivered and not have to go.
And that is, I do think that those things, like I often say, like self-care is not a face mask. Like it's not like I'm gonna have a spa night and drink tea. And yes, I mean some of those things are self-care too, but like sometimes self-care is just prioritizing your schedule and like quality of life over tasks that need to be done. And I mean I'm like fully aware that this is point of privilege kind of stuff, like okay, so you can like you have the $11 to pay for.
None of that is lost.
I mean, we totally get that.
yes.
We totally get that. But like sometimes it's like, okay, so this is the life that we have, and these are the options that we have. And if having something, brought in or ordering dinner or whatever it is an option to kind of simplify life, that sometimes doing that really does create better quality of life. Actually, the whole like home ownership thing is weighing heavily on me too, because as we talked about, like there's this whole liability when you have an older home, which we both do, and there's been a lot of work done on both homes, and yet it's constant. You constantly have things coming up, and I feel like for me at least, there's this point of privilege of like, okay, so we're homeowners, and isn't that a really like kind of an amazing thing that you get to do that? And then also this other part, which is like, it's such a drain on our resources. It's such a drain on our mental energy.
Yes.
And I'm just kind of wondering about that. And I'm not going tiny house. That's not what I'm talking about. Or like,
you probably will go condo.
I will go condo.
Yeah. Well,
like sooner than later. I mean, I think that we are like destined to do this sooner than later, or like home share, or like something that's like non-traditional, you know, with other people who are like in a similar time of life where they're going to be like doing some travel and like kind of ping-ponging between different places.
Yeah.
I'm not down, you guys. It is
a huge, again, it's an absolute privilege, but it's a time suck, and it's
resources. So many resources. And your washing machine is going to break. And your stove is going to break. And you're going to have mice.
And it
and
breaks
you're gonna
the moment. Often the moment you're like just starting to save money, or thinking like, oh, okay, you know, we can maybe start putting a little money away, or, you know, you don't have anything saved, and then it's like,
three things break.
And you're like, where's
and you're
money?
like, how do I fix my fucking zone valve myself?
What has to give? Yeah, it is. It's a lot of work to own a home. That's a good.
It's a good note to end on.
Yeah, a lot of work to have a home. There's a better way.
Well, we hope that this has been at least a little bit interesting to listen to. I mean, we have maybe 1,000 hours of these kinds of conversations, like backlog, that we are excited to share with you. And we also want to know, you know, kind of more about what you are thinking about and what you would like to talk about. So thanks for listening in.
Yeah, thanks for sticking with us through our first ever
conversation on the couch.
Conversation on the couch
I
session.
think convo on the couch. Couch combos.
Yeah, we got to come up with a clever name.
And then a song. Couch combos on the couch. Couch com. It's like car talk.
It is.
Car talk. Oh yeah.
Oh, that was Chips. What's our car talk?
Car talk. Tucking in the car. Car talk. Tucking in the won't get you very far. Something like that.
Yeah, it was.
Car talk.
Car talk.
But this is couch talk. Okay. Thanks, guys. Bye.